welcome to ChemTube Lessons, and our topic today is energy change in a chemical reaction, exothermic and endothermic reaction. Now our lesson objective is to learn about the definition of exothermic and endothermic reaction, and also the energy level diagram of endothermic and exothermic reaction. Okay, so let's look at the definition of what exothermic and endothermic reactions are. Exothermic reaction is one which gives out heat to the surrounding. So it gives out heat to the surrounding, while endothermic reaction is one which absorbs heat from the surrounding. So endothermic absorbs heat from the surrounding, while exothermic gives out heat to the surrounding. So let's look at examples of endothermic processes. We have number one, dissolving ammonium chloride in water. We have cracking of alkanes. We have evaporating liquid water. We have melting of ice. So these are examples of endothermic. Now let's go to the examples of exothermic processes. We have reaction of strong acid and water. We have water and calcium chloride, reaction between water and calcium chloride. We have rusting of iron, that's corrosion of iron. We have burning of sugar. So these are examples of endothermic and exothermic reaction. Now, why is heat absorbed or released in a chemical reaction? So why do we have the release of heat or absorbing of heat in a chemical reaction? And in any chemical reaction, so chemical bonds are either broken or formed. And the rule of thumb is when chemical bonds are formed, heat is released, and when chemical bonds are broken, heat is absorbed. So breaking of bond, since it involves absorbing of heat, it is endothermic, while bond formation, since it involves release of heat energy, it is exothermic. So again, we have when it's absorb heat energy from the surrounding, it is endothermic. So energy is needed to overcome attractive forces between atoms, while energy is given out when new bonds are formed. So endothermic involve bond breaking, while exothermic involve bond making. So take notes. So that is why energy is released or absorbed during chemical reactions. So let's look at the energy level diagram of exothermic. This diagram is very, very important. You must understand the diagram and how to draw it, and how to interpret it. Now, in an exothermic reaction, now looking at exothermic reaction now, the reactants are higher than the product. So if you look at the diagram you have here, in an exothermic reaction, the reactant level is usually higher than the product level, and the enthalpy change is negative, because when you do the enthalpy change, it is usually negative. Now for the energy level diagram of endothermic reaction, now the reactants are lower while the products are higher because energy is absorbed. So the enthalpy change is usually positive. It is positive because the HP, heat content of the products minus heat content of the reactants, is usually positive. So we'll be looking at some examples to make you understand why it is positive for endothermic and why it is negative for exothermic. So let's look at this. Calculate the enthalpy change of the energy level diagram and determine if it's an endothermic or exothermic. Remember, endothermic is positive, exothermic is negative. Now, how do we do that? We do the enthalpy change is equals to the heat content of the product minus the heat content of the reactant. Now, if you look at this graph, the heat content of the product, that's the one which the arrow is pointing at, is 100 kilojoules, while the heat content of the reactant is 50 kilojoules. So the enthalpy change is 100. That means the product minus the reactant, that is 100 kilojoules minus 50 kilojoules. So it will give you a value of 50 kilojoule, which is positive. So since it is positive, so what does it mean? The reaction is endothermic because the enthalpy change is positive. So that is how we calculate the enthalpy change using the energy level diagram. So I hope it's clear now. All right, so you are going to use these questions to evaluate yourself to see how much you have understood exothermic and endothermic reaction. And please do not hesitate if you have any question or anything that is not clear to you about heat change in a chemical reaction. Please do not hesitate to send your question in the comment section. So thank you very much for watching this video.